Assalamualaikum and good day to all. Okay, for today, for week 3, lecture 3, we're going to talk about the engineering materials and their properties. So basically, this chapter is almost like that you have learned in the engineering materials BMFG 1213. Okay, so for the outline for this lecture, the first one will be the introduction, the families of engineering materials, materials information for design, material properties for and their needs, and also the mechanical properties for the materials. Okay, for the introduction, the main purpose of the material is to be used to make the product as per design. Okay. So one might say that the material itself, the material itself is the fruit of design, and a successful product, the one performs well is a good value for money and give pleasure to the user. Not that pleasure, but pleasure to the user. Okay, uses the best material for the job and fully exploit their potential and characteristics. So basically, the materials need to be as cheap as possible, as functional as possible, and good for money. Okay, when you're going to produce a product, going to going to design a product, basically you need to consider the material. So the material need to be as economical as possible without failing the purpose of the product, which is the function of the product. So as you know, all materials is in a family of materials. So we have a various type of materials that you have learned in the engineering material first year. Okay, you have metals, polymers, elastomers, ceramics, glasses, and hybrids. So hybrids basically any kind of combination two different, completely different material combined to one. Okay, the members of a family has certain features in common, which is similar properties, okay, similar processing routes, and similar applications. So from the material universe, we pick one type of material which is come on one from one family, for example, metals, and then all metals have almost similar properties and then similar processing route and applications. So this figure 3.1, okay, this one from the HB book. Okay, so basically you have metals family, polymers, elastomers, glasses, ceramics, and right in the middle, which is the hybrids or composites, a combination of two or more of these two different materials. Okay, so for metals, as you know, you have pure steel, and then you can have alloys. For polymers, is a lot of polymers. You need the whole encyclopedia and all the data for polymers. Elastomers. So the difference between polymers and elastomers, polymers tend to be solids, elastomers sometimes not solid, and so on. Okay, but also polymer also sometimes in form of a liquid. Okay, so for the glasses, you have soda glass, borosilicate glass, silica glass, and then you have glass ceramics. And then for the ceramics, uh, sometimes made from the aluminum oxide, and then you have a silicon carbide. So basically, ceramics is sometimes can be formed by alloying compound, but this alloying compound need to be two different material lah. Okay, so sometimes ceramics is different thing compared to glasses. Glasses, they don't have pores. Ceramics, they have holes a lot on the surface. But sometimes you can make it less pores where you can upgrade it or you can sinter it at high temperature so you can reduce the pores in the ceramics. So all these materials have different properties, okay, different processing route, and then different applications. Okay, but the first family of materials, which is metal. So as you already know, metals have relatively high modulus. I think what the slide try to say is the material have high tensile modulus and so on. So the metal itself, okay, whenever the metal is very pure, almost like 99.5% and above, should be considerably soft and easily deformed. Okay, as you learn in the engineering materials, so the atoms for the metals are equal to each other and then easily to be moved because they have no much resistance. When you insert some other metal to the for example iron, and then you insert some copper or nickel inside it, then the size of the atom will be not the same, and then it will be harder to be dislocate or to be moved. So they can be made strong by alloying and by mechanical and also heat treatment, as you already know in the phase diagram for the iron carbide phase diagram, but they remain ductile, allowing them to be formed by the formation process. So metal, the benefit of metal, the advantage for using metal is easy to be formed, easy to deform into a certain shape. A certain high strength alloy, for example, spring steel, high speed steel, and so on, have ductility as low as 1%. Sometimes high speed steel you have you insert some of the nickel and also carbon inside it so that the material to be high toughness, high tensile strength, and then and also high temperature resistance and so on. But even this is enough to ensure that the material used before it fractures and that fractures will occur, and also is of a tough ductile type. So if you already familiar with the materials with metals, so you know that some alloy, for example, in comparison pure metals such as pure aluminium, in comparison with the copper zinc, which is you call brass, you have almost similar type of fractures. Okay, both have ductile, but the longer one will be the pure aluminium. The shorter ductile fracture will be the brass. Okay, partly because of their ductilities, metals are prey to fatigue, and of all the classes of material, they are prone to corrosion because metal is easily to be attacked by anions from chloride, boron, sorry, not boron, chloride, fluoride, nitride, and so on. So that kind of thing, that kind of anion easily to attack the metal itself, producing, for example, from Fe, which is iron, and then to oxide themselves to become Fe2 plus ion. As for ceramics, as you might as well know, compared to metal, you have high modulus, but they tend to become brittle, very brittle, because the ceramic itself sometimes porous, and then they don't have any ductilities, and then they have low tolerance for stress concentrations. For example, you have chipping, cracks, hole, that kind of thing will weaken the structure of the ceramics. Also, sometimes they tend to have less stress resistant. For example, heat stress resistance. Okay, for example, if you contact with glass and high heat and then sudden reduce the temperature, then the ceramics themselves will be cracked and easy to be broken. So the strength in tensions mean that the brittle fractures strength in comparison is the brittle crushing strength, which is about 15 times larger. So ductile materials accommodate stress concentration by deforming in a way that redistribute the load. Okay, redistribute the load. So you have load. For example, if you're pulling a metal, then the load will distribute themselves along the atoms inside the metal themselves. But as for the ceramics, okay, ceramic do not have this kind of distribution of the stress, because ceramic themselves is considered as a compound material combined sometimes with metals, and then some oxides, some carbon, and so on. So they do not act well with a high concentrated stress. So brittle materials always have a wide scatter in strength, and the strength itself depends on the volume of material under load and time which is applied. So such as mentioned is as before, they don't dissipate, or they don't redistribute the stress or the load very well. So ceramic are not as easy to design with as metal, okay, but they have a very attractive features. Okay, very good point. Okay, since they are stiff, hard, abrasion resistant, sometimes they can be used as a cutting tool or bearings. Sometimes they can be used as a refractory materials and so on. Of course, due to the nature of ceramics, okay, it is supposed to have a high corrosion resistance against oxidation or direct oxidation of high temperature, and then also from chemicals and so on. So they can be used in a wide application. For example, you can use it as a material for the furnace, you can use it as a material in the jet engine, and then you can use it as a material for hip and joint. Okay, but almost nowadays, but the for example hip joints and so on, they can use the super alloy such as titanium, aluminum, vanadium alloy and so on, as for the hip replacement for the biomedical purpose. But for tools, you can use that one. As another one, you can have glasses. Okay, glasses is non-crystalline. Non-crystalline, which is amorphous. If you go to check the glass properties in XRD, you don't have any high peaks. High peaks basically is crystalline, highly crystalline, such as pure metal, alloys, and so on. But amorphous, whenever you try to uh, I think try to transmit or try to attack the surface with X-ray, they tend to disperse very widely because they have a different crystal structure, and then they all mesh up together. So the commonest or the most common used glasses will be the soda lime borosilicate families. Okay, so they have soda lime glass, borosilicate glass, such as being used in bottle, ovenware, and so on. So metal can also be made as a non-crystalline, such as when you are doing rapid quenching for high temperature carbon steel. You heat the carbon steel at certain temperature, for example, 300 degrees or 600 degrees, and then you suddenly drop the temperature up to, for example, 100, even 100 or 80 degrees. Then you can have a non-crystalline structure which is amorphous. I think this one is already done in the phase diagram, where you have a metal phase changing from the alpha phase, for example, and then suddenly change into martensite phase and so on. Okay. So the lack of crystal suppress its plasticity. So like ceramics, glass are very hard and very brittle and vulnerable to stress concentrations. Okay, of course, you already know this one. If you have your windshield for your car, and then sometimes whenever you hit some rocks, small rock, okay, and then the whole glass can be fractured. Okay, and then for next material will be the polymers. Okay, so polymers, they have a very low modulus, easy to be stretched with. So you have high ductility, and then they can be strong also. They can be strong. as strong as steel. For example, if you go for the high-tech polymer, or sometimes they can use the uh, for example, in the industry, polymer such as polyethylene, they have a high hardness. Polycarbonate, they can be used as a fish tank and so on. So, as a consequence of this polymer characteristic, you have an elastic deflection. So, elastic deflection means that when you have for elastic, when you stretch and then they go back to the normal size. Okay, elastic. But sometimes you have a elastic deformation where you exceed some certain of limit, and then you have a different length. Okay, when you remove back the load, and then you can have a different length of the material itself. Of course, they creep, not that creepy thing. They creep means that you can stretch it at high temperature. Okay, even at room temperature, the polymer component under load may acquire a permanent set. This one is similar as the elastic deformation or plastic deformation. They call it plastic deformation. Elastic going back to original size. Plastic deformation where you increase the load or you increase the temperature, and then they will not return back to the original condition. Another thing for the polymers, their properties depend on the temperature. So they can be tough and flexible at 20 degrees or room temperature and so on. So they also can be brittle at 4 degrees Celsius. So sometimes when you put some plasticware in your freezer, sometimes the plasticware also can be crushed, like easily crushed, easily broken with your hand. Okay, after you freeze it less than 0 degrees. Okay, also you can make it like deform whenever you put it into the microwave, or you heat it up to 100, because most plastic tend to creep at 100 degrees. And for example, okay, polyethylene, okay, polyethylene or polyethylene terephthalate PET, that kind of polymers easily to be stretched or deformed at high temperature more than 40 to 50 degrees. Whereas if you have polycarbonate such as used in the baby bottles, so you can exceed 100 degrees, but if you exceed more than that, like 120, also can be deformed significantly. So sometimes they have a special kind of polymers, plastic materials that can be used above 200 degrees, but such as polymers, you know that if you increase the temperature, sometimes they tend to be oxidized also with the atmospheric condition, with oxygen, with the chemical, with the physical, okay, mechanical stretch and so on. Okay, sometimes if these aspects are allowed for the design, so the advantages of the polymer can be exploited. Okay, as you know, if you consider the temperature of the usage of the product of the design, okay, based on the design need to be used at the temperature below 100, then you can use this plastic. So when combination of properties such as strength per unit are important, polymer are as good as metal. Okay, sometimes you need to have some component used in the automobile. So automobile, if you can replace some of the component from metal to plastic, because sometimes plastic having high hardness and so on, but they have the much more benefit because the polymer use itself is basically chemical resistant, almost chemical resistant, but they are weak for towards the organic solvents such as acetone. Okay, so acetone can be used to melt down the numbers for your car plates, for example. Okay. Of course, since the polymer are very ductile and temperature sensitive, so they are easy to shape. Okay, easy to shape. Either you can blow molding, compression molding, and so on. So they can easily to be made into a various form, as well as the for example, you can harden it using a different kind of filler and so on. So you can accurately sizing the mold and pre-coloring the polymer. No finishing operation are needed. Okay, of course, after you go for the hot press and so on, if you have the mold used for the polymers, okay, the only finishing that you need is to remove all the excess material. Okay, of course they have excess material. So polymers, as I mentioned before, are corrosion resistant, chemical resistant, but they are very weak against the organic solvent, and also they are weak to each other. For example, you have PVC and then you have PET. Do not touch them together because similar as metal, they call it electron galvanic reaction. For example, if you have zinc and then you have iron, touch together side by side, and then zinc will be easily to be oxidized. Of course, the benefit of the zinc will be the galvanicity because zinc become an oxide that beneficial for the corrosion protection. But polymer tend to be not that kind of have win-win situation. So polymer, if you touch different polymer to each other, so one of the polymer will be weakened, okay, will be degraded significantly. Elastomer, as you already know, elastomer have long chain polymer, which is above the glass transition temperature, TG, okay, glass transition temperature, TG, which made them into amorphous-like structure, amorphous structure. So the covalent bonds that links the unit of polymer remain intact, but the weaker van der Waals and hydrogen bonds. So if ionic bond tend to be a solid one, so van der Waals is like whenever you have chain at the end of the chain of the elastomer, they have sometimes the concentration of the electron is much more higher into, for example, at the CO bond, carbon oxygen bond. So that bond is actually having a much more negative, okay, much more negative value over there. So it will attract the positive value for the other bonds. So you have a hydrogen bonds, you have van der Waals bond. So both of them are below gas transition temperature. So this elastomer is easy to melt. So this gives us a unique properties profile, which is having a young modulus as low as in the megapascal unit compared to metal. Sometimes they have at least in gigapascal. So it is like 100 times less okay, than typical metals. And then as the temperature increase, is also increase the elasticity extension, means that easily to be stretched, and then when you increase the temperature, much more stretch. And then their properties differ so much from those other solids that special tests have evolved to characterize them. Because elastomer having a very good elastic properties, okay, but they tends to stretch it very well. For example, if you have the elastic uh, def- not elastic deformation, elastic line came from the tensile strength, you have a very long line, okay, very long stretch before you get the plastic deformation, okay. So they have a different kind of tools or equipment to evaluate the elastomer compared to plastic. Plastic you can use directly, you can use bending, flexural test, tensile compression, but elastomer, they don't they act well against those kind of tests. So you need to have a different kind of test. For example, you can use fatigue. Okay, you can use fatigue test to evaluate the elastomer. Fatigue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, number of cycle and so on. So hybrids are the combination two or more materials in the different family in a predetermined configuration and scale. Combination two or more material doesn't mean in similar family, but you need to combine it with the, for example, plastic with glass, plastic with ceramic, metal with ceramics, and so on. So they combine the attractive properties of each other family material. For example, metal with ceramics. Ceramic is very hard, metal is very ductile. You combine it together, and then you can have right just nice properties. So the family of hybrids includes fiber. For example, the one you use is fiber composite in use in the aircraft. Particulate composite. Okay, particulate composite such as, for example, you use the filler, carbon filler into the plastics, into the epoxy, so that you can have a very hard panel. Sandwich structure, for example, two different types of materials such as you can use metal with plastics, so that you can have a good enough, for example, vibration resistance and so on. Lattice structures, foam, cables, and laminates. Almost all the materials of nature, wood, bone, skin, leaf, are hybrids. As you know, bone, the structure of bone, the whole structure, the outer part will be made from calcium, okay, calcium, not calcium carbonate, calcium base. And then the inside it will be the organic material. So you can have a very strong bone comparable to concrete. So concrete, steel, and rocks combined together with cement. So you can have concrete. Bones, however, you have calcium-based structure, okay, which is similar like ceramics, okay, and then you combine it with the organic matter, okay, of the, for example, protein and so on inside the bone, and then you can have a good composite. Of course, fiber reinforced composite are of course to be most familiar, such as used in the aircraft, in the ships, boats, and so on. And then most of these present available to engineer have a polymer matrix reinforced by fiber of glass, carbon, or Kevlar, which is made from aramid, which is aramid. So they are very light, considerably light, stiff and strong, and then they can also be tough, such as, for example, you can compare carbon fiber composite with the usage of steel for the high performance car. Of course, they don't come cheap, okay, because the process for the carbon fiber composite is very tedious, because you have to consider the material themselves, the chemical for the, for example, the epoxy resins, and then the mold for the composite themselves. They have to they have to make it a very nice mold. For example, for aircraft, they need to make it into a pre-pack. You have to use heat to make it to cure the structure of the composite themselves. So they tend to be expensive, but yet they have a very high performance comparable to steel. So they can be used in a very demanding manner. For example, in aeroplane, aircraft, you can use it in the fuselage. For example, for in the Boeing 787, I think. And then also other hybrid using a polymer as one component cannot be used above 250 degrees. As you already know, plastic it tend to be weakened at temperature above 100 degrees towards 200 degrees. So above than that, the plastic themselves sometimes can be burned, sometimes melt, and then deform significantly. So as the polymer soften, then the performance will be reduced significantly. So hybrid components are expensive, as I mentioned before, because the process to make the composite It's very tedious. It's very expensive. You need to consider the environment also. So a lot of carbon fiber composite or the epoxy, the fiberglass composite, okay, they not actually dissolve easily, yeah, because plastic do not dissolve easily in the normal environment, okay, where you have just rain and sometimes a little bit salt, a little bit alkaline or acidic. They don't act very well. Okay, they don't react very well with these conditions. They just stay there to get all along. They don't any change at all. So problem about the waste of the composite material is very high, very expensive. So despite their attractive properties, the designer will use them only when the added performance justify the added cost. For example, if you consider to make an aeroplane made from composite, then they have to make the justification on why to use them. For high performance components such as used in the motorbike for racing, so that justify the added cost. Of course, the cost will be like one simple panel is like cost like 20,000 ringgit or 20,000 USD and so on. So today's growing emphasis on high performance and fuel efficiency provide increasing drivers for the use. So the usage is to reduce the weight, hence enhancing or increase the efficiency of using the fuel. So you cut cost for the fuel, and then of course you reduce the load of the aeroplane, and then you can travel faster, and then you can use a lot of extra load on the aeroplane, so you can carry much more, and then of course the cost of producing it will be much more, I think, economical compared when you are using aluminium and so on. So materials information for design, the engineer in selecting materials for a developing design needs data for material properties. Whenever you want to make, for example, a jet engine, okay, a jet engine, you need to use a very high temperature material, high toughness, high friction resistant and so on. That kind of material that need to be used very specifically for the engine type or condition or the environment to be used. Such for example, if you want to use it for furnace, so if the furnace is the temperature is up to 2000 degrees, so different kind of refractory material can be used. If the heating required for example, if you use the temperature is like 200 degrees or 250, similar as cooking, so you don't have to use this refractory material or ceramics, but you can use just metal also. Okay, for example, 2000 degrees you cannot use metal, but of course heating element need to be used as, for example, you can use gas, you can use burner and so on. Okay, so engineers are often conservative in their choice, reluctant to consider the material with which material that are familiar and with good reason. So, for example, if you are familiar with developing a pressure vessel using carbon steel, they don't try to change it into a different kind of material. For example, uh, they want to use titanium. Titanium is good because they have a very light. It's like half of the weight of the steel, half of the density of the steel, and then it's very corrosion resistant compared to steel. But in another way, you have another problem, which is the cost of the fabricating it, because titanium is not easy to be used, and then the cost of welding, because if you want, in order for you to join different material to titanium, you not weld it very well with steel. Okay, because steel tends to have a galvanic reaction in between uh, titanium and steel. So you need some kind of data. You need a very good choice. You need a lot of data so that you justify what the material that you will being used. So data for the all well tried materials are established, reliable, and easily be found. For example, carbon steel, you find it a lot of the information in the net. For example, if you go for the MATWEB, MATWEB, you have a similar kind of material database, not comparable, but sufficient enough to get the whole overview of the material properties. If you use the CES EduBags, you have a lot of the materials updates, the properties against, for example, opacity, chemical resistant, vibration resistant, and so on. So, for example, in MATLAB, you have mechanical properties and so on. So, data for the newer emerging materials may be incomplete or untrustworthy. Basically, the new material that have been designed or produced, they're not proven yet. So, they tend to use the already used material. Not already used material means the well-known materials. Okay, compared to carbon steel, and then over here you have an alloy. You don't know what is the difference. You don't know what is the advantages or disadvantages. Probably when you change this kind of material into the design that you are making, probably they tend to have another problem, and then this problem probably unknown. Then you going in a loop studying about the failure mechanism, failure analysis, and then you don't have enough data to analyze. Of course, for researcher, it's no problem because they are dealing with a small amount of the material, and then they have a less risk. But in for the industries, they have a lot of liability, and then they have a lot of risk. And for example, in oil and gas industries, they can choose to use stainless steel for the pressure vessel, but they tend to use carbon steel. Sometimes they ask me why they use carbon steel. Not because they are cheap, easy to be produced, and then they cost like a third or a fourth of the stainless steel. Of course, stainless steel you can have a very high performance and so on, but they have also some problem regarding for the stainless steel. For example, they don't act well with chloride. So they have a stress corrosion crack easily compared to the carbon steel. Carbon steel you only have corrosion, and then this corrosion whenever the thickness is become too much low, and then you just replace it, and then the cost is also significantly lower compared to whenever you are using the stainless steel. So innovation is often made as possible by new material, usually researcher and innovator and so on, but they're all part of the trial part, not in the direct applications. So it is important to know how to judge the data quality. So you need to have a precise data to be used. So if the resource based on just by research paper, it may be not enough. So you need to have actual industrial data. So they need to have a risk taker. So the risk taker will provide you what going wrong with the material used in the design. So the material information for design, for example, in the laboratory you have tensile strength, then you can get a lot of data. So you do the statistical analysis as you are learned in the engineering mathematics and engineering statistics. So you have a lot of mechanical properties such as bulk, modulus, compressive strength, ductility, elastic limit, endurance limit, and so on. That kind of data is very helpful for the industry, for the designer, for the engineers to use it before in designing the product or in designing producing a product. So of course, you have a various set of data, then you can go for the potential application, and then you can do economical analysis for and business case. Of course, as I mentioned before, all the materials can be used, high performance, low performance, in medium like performance. At the end of the case or in the end of the project, the boss will say you which one is the cheapest. Okay, reliable, cheapest. So over here you have test data lah. So you have test data. Probably you need to have the test data verified by the government. For example, government institution. For example, you have SIRIM verified data. Of course, the data is very expensive that you need to buy. So that's why you have sometimes the material properties you cannot search it in the net, in the internet. So probably you need to buy the information from the company, from the client and so on. So you need those information before you proceed your project. So the definition of material properties, as you all know, you already learned in the engineering material BMFG 1213. So each material can be thought as having a set of attribute of properties. So it is not material per se that the designer seeks, but it is the specific combination of these attributes, which is the property and profile. So they are looking towards the property profile. So for example, in the CES EduPack software, if you have time by this year or next year, if you have time to go to the lab, then you can search various kind of material based on the properties rather than you just seek based on the type of material. So engineers tend to find out this property and this property, for example, tensile, fracture, toughness, and so on, that kind of filter that can you be used to find out the material. Okay, so the data itself is very important. So the data for the material that they need to be used, for example, it came from the design requirement. So the design requirement have state that this pressure vessel need to be used in the acidic condition. So acidic will be the one of the filter. And then another thing, this pressure vessel need to be used near seashore. So need to be used near seashore. Probably you have to consider corrosion resistant against seawater. So you add another two. You already have two filters. So another thing. So this pressure vessel need to be having a tensile strength. For example, at least 250 megapascal. So 250 megapascal is way exceeding the stainless steel and so on. So probably you need to have to use some kind of carbon steel and so on. So that kind of filter came from the design requirement or the requirement or the function requirement or the operating requirement for the product itself. So the material name is the identifier for a particular property profile. So the properties themselves are standard, okay, which is some such as density, modulus, strength, toughness, thermal, electrical conductivity, and so on. So sometimes they are giving you the spec, the material itself that you need to find it by yourself. So this is some example for the basic design limiting material properties and their usual SI unit. So if you go for the uh, CS material selection lab, you have uh, general properties such as density and price. This one is quite common. Mechanical properties, you have thermal properties, electrical properties, optical, and also eco properties. So these are the properties are required by the client, are required by the design requirement, so that you can decide what kind of material that can be used. So as for the general properties, the most common thing is how heavy and what is the price. Okay, so how heavy is because if you are selling metal, then they sell it by weight. Okay, so you need, if you by mean weight means that you need to know the density. So the higher the density, the higher the weight. Okay, so of course the price will be acting as per increase the density. If the weight increase, of course, the price is increase. So of the material span wide range, some as cost as a little as 20 cent per kilogram, and then some might reach up to $1,000 per kilogram. So that kind of thing, probably you can search in the net and also some kind in the lab. So in the net, probably for example, 20 dollar per kilogram. For example, a very specific stainless steel material cost. So you can compare to the mild steel, which is like $1 per kilogram. For example, just but you can search in the net. So price of course fluctuate, same as gold lah. You already know in the March the price will be going to 300 ringgit per kilogram, okay, for gold, for 999 gold. And then sometimes they can reduce to 250 ringgit per kilogram. Of course, in the 10 years before, it's like 160 ringgit per kilogram. That kind of fluctuate price you can expect due to the market supply and demand. For example, oil also is the commodity that have a fluctuation in price. Whenever you have a movement restriction, then there are abundance of oil, so they cannot be used. So the price will be going down. If the higher demand, then you can have a higher price of the oil. Okay, of course you can estimate the price. Of course you can estimate the manufacturer to reduce the cost and so on, but it depends on the market price. So for the mechanical properties, you have elastic modulus, you have Young modulus E, you have Poisson ratio, okay. And then also you can have flexural bending stress, shear stress, and so on. That kind of thing. Shear modulus, shear modulus. So that kind of the mechanical properties that you is very quantitative. Okay, quantitative. Not quantitative, quantitative. And then you can measure it lah. Say for example, if the carbon steel, if being used in the not pressure vessel, it's actually used in the heat exchanger. So they need to have a sufficient hardness so that, for example, incident occurs in the heat exchanger where you have burn inside the heat exchanger plate inside, and then it reach outside the shell, and then you need to determine whether the heat exchanger or the vessel contain the heat exchanger can be used or not. You have to measure the hardness, the Brenner hardness. Actually, in field they use Brenner hardness to determine whether this outer shell vessel can be used or not. So it depends on that. So accurate modulus or moduli are measured dynamically by exciting the natural vibrations of beam or wires by measuring the velocity of sound waves in the material and so on. So they need to measure it very accurately. So as for the isotropic material, the moduli are related in the following ways. For example, you have elastic modulus E, and then you have shear modulus G. So the relationship that you need to know is per equation. Commonly known if you have the Poisson ratio, which is a third when you consider shear stress modulus, which is 3/8 of the Young modulus. So basically, you can have the in comparison between the elastic modulus and shear modulus. So you can, if you have one material property, for example, elastic modulus, so you can relate it with other properties, which is, for example, in this case, shear modulus. So you have the relationship between Young modulus and shear modulus, so that you can have the constant K, for example. So Over here, whenever you have a Poisson ratio more likely half 50%, so G, the shear modulus, will be a third of the elastic modulus. So K will be much more bigger compared to E, where K is the constant. Okay, moving through, but of course, in this case, this is what we call general knowledge about the relationship between elastic modulus, Young modulus, and Poisson ratio. So for the mechanical properties of metal, as you know that metals is ductile. Okay, metals and its alloy is ductile. It can be stretched. So over here, this one will be the elastic phase. Above this will be the plastic deformation. So over here, you can, in this line, you can have elastic properties when you stretch or apply load to the material, then if you release the load and then the material will be come back to the original dimension, whereas after you reach the plastic deformation point, so you can have another different elastic, okay, line over here. So you can have over here, this one you already learn in the strength of materials and also in the engineering materials. So both you are really there in both courses. So the strength, which is the uh, tensile strength, okay, often depict as sigma F like that, okay. So the tensile or Young modulus, okay, should be in form of megapascal. Okay, the tensile strength, not Young modulus. Young modulus is mostly in gigapascal. Okay, so you have an offset after you reach the plastic deformation point. So you have an offset 0.2% offset. I think you have already learned in the stress strain curve in the engineering material and also the strength of material. So Young modulus in comparison between metals, alloy, ceramics, polymers, and composites. So you can have a different level of the Young modulus. Okay. So over here, plastics, polymers tend to have a low Young modulus, which is almost lower than 5 gigapascal. Giga 10 power of 9 pascal. Okay, probably they can be shown as in megapascal level. Then you can have over here carbon fiber. So carbon fiber, in the composite region over here. So when you ever to mix two different materials, two completely different family materials, then you can have a wide range of the Young modulus. For example, if you use wood with plastic, okay, you have a very low Young modulus compared to carbon fiber, which is almost similar or higher than the metal. Okay, so metal over here should be around 40 gigapascal up to 400 or 500 gigapascal. So the lowest one would be tin, for example, and gold, and for example, the highest one would be the tungsten. So any kind of combination tungsten with carbon, for example, carbon is most likely the ceramic phase. You can have a very high hardness tungsten carbide that can be used for cutting tools, for example, the cutting insert inside the CNC machine. So graphite, ceramics, and semiconductor tend to have a brittle but very high Young modulus. So you have a wide range, but the lowest one is graphite, which is carbon, and then you have concrete, and then the hardest one will be the highest one will be diamonds. Okay, so this is the comparison in between families of material. Okay. Then for polymers, as you already know that the polymers is a very ductile and temperature sensitive. When you have a temperature sensitive means that in low temperature it become brittle. So if the temperature is lower than the glass transition temperature, you can have a brittle properties. If you use it in the normal room temperature, then you can have this kind of condition. Okay. So when you add carbon filler inside the polymers, then it should be become a composite. So you can increase the properties. Of course, polymer uh, is also weak against the shear stress, okay, as well as the tensile stress and so on. So you have a different kind of properties depending on the different kind of the condition that you can use for the polymer. If you want to use it in the high temperature, probably you can have a lot of strain and so on. As for the ceramics, as you already know that the ceramic is brittle but having higher Young modulus, but it depending on the type of testing. Okay, either you have tensile test or you can have compression test. So you have a different value came out from these two tests. For example, the ceramic in this figure 3.5 over here. So you have the compressive stress of for example, sigma C over here compared to the tensile stress sigma T over here. So it's actually 10 or to 15 times greater than tensile strength. So you have compressive strength which is much higher greater compared to the tensile strength. So in this case, the data that you are required is depending on your which condition that you want to use uh, this material. For example, if you want to use as a beam or structure, probably you need to know the shear, okay, shear stress, and then also the compressive stress because shear they also come from the compression. So over here, ceramic classes depending strongly on the mode of loading, either compression or tensile. In the compression, you should be the crushing strength, which is much more larger compared to the tensile strength. Okay, as already know, that ceramics is very hard. Of course, during the testing, it's very hard to clamp the ceramic themselves. For example, if you clamp too hard, and then you can have a brittle part or broken part at the edge of the ceramic sample. Of course, whenever you want to use several tests for the ceramics, usually we use compression, okay, compression test, and another one which is you already know, which is the flexural test. So flexural test, you can use various kind of materials except elastomer, because elastomer you don't have any rigid structure. So for the ceramics, from the fracture strength, okay, fracture test, you can have the fracture strength, which is can be considered as the modulus of rupture (MOR). Okay, so of course over here, you cannot just say that this value for the sigma flex, which is the fracture stress, can be comparable to the tensile stress and so on. But overall, you can have some kind of the relation between the modulus of fracture versus the tensile stress or the compression stress. Over here, as you already know, the fracture stress is a 3-point bending where you apply one force in one concentration point over here, and then you have to calculate the length, the dimension, and so on. Within the length and the dimension of the sample of the ceramics, you can calculate the flexure strength. So over here, after you have a certain amount of force applied on the surface of the ceramics sample, over here you can have a fracture over here. Then whenever you have fracture, then the force over here, the calculated force during the test will be dropped significantly lah. But of course during this time you can have over here, which is the flexural strength. Okay, for the composite, usually we use sigma F, which is the tensile strength for the composite. Actually, the sigma F is the fracture strength or fracture stress. Okay, so for the composite, the strength of a composite is best defined by a set of deviation from linear elastic behavior about 0.5%. So the composite that contains fiber, which is include natural composite like wood, are a little weaker up to 30% in compression compared to tensions because fiber buckle inside the matrix. Okay. So in subsequent chapter, sigma F, which is the fracture stress or fracture strength for the composites, means the tensile strength. So for the strength, then it depends on the material classes and on the mode of loading. The other modes of loading are possible shear, for instance, yield under multi-axial load is related to that in the simple tension by yield function. For metals, the von Mises yield function is a good description, okay, as shown in this equation over here. Okay, where sigma 1 and sigma 2 and sigma 3 are the principal stresses, positive when tensile, okay, negative when compressions. And then sigma 1 by convention is the largest or most positive. And then sigma 3 will be the smallest or the least. Probably you don't have to know a lot about the von Mises because this one is related for the flexural test and so on. But the point is that you need to know for the composite they use failure stress sigma F as the yield strength for the composite compared to the metal and also ceramics. So for the ceramics they use flexural, and then they have also compression strength. Okay, for metal they use tensile, similar as plastic and elastomers. For polymers, the yield function is modified to include the effect of pressure. So over here, where K is the bulk modulus of the polymer, where beta is almost equivalent to 2, is a numerical coefficient that characterizes the pressure dependence of the flow strength, and the pressure P is defined by this equation. For ceramics, in other case, a Coulomb flow law is used. Of course, this one is fundamental, so it's better for you to know, but it's not much applied during these courses. The ultimate tensile strength, sigma U unit in megapascal, is the nominal stress at which a round bar of a material loaded in tension separates. Basically, it's like fracture strength. Okay. For brittle solids such as ceramics, glass, and brittle polymer, it is the same as the failure strength in tension. For metals, ductile polymers, and most composite, it is larger than strength, okay, larger than the failure strength by a factor of between 1.1 and 3 because of work hardening, or in the case of composite, load transfer to the reinforcement. Another mechanical properties that can be used as a design requirement, for example, is the cyclic loading, which contribute the data for the fatigue strength. As you know that if you have the fracture stress or tensile stress, which contribute the ultimate tensile strength. For example, you have a very high loading, okay, that can be applied to a certain material one times only. But in this case, for the cyclic, you apply the load lesser than the tensile strength or fracture strength and so on, but you do it in a manner of in a in a in the in the amplitude mode. Okay, for example, you increase the load, you reduce the load, and so on, and then this kind of behavior producing fatigue to the material. If you want to see the relationship between the tensile strength and also the endurance limit, then you need to know that the amount of the endurance limit is directly related to the numbers of cycles. So if you increase the number of cycles, the maximum stress that you can apply to the material is very low. For example, over here, if you apply it 10 million times, so it becomes lesser than half of the tensile stress. For many materials, there exists a fatigue or endurance limit. So endurance limit, which is the sigma E in unit megapascal, can be illustrated in this figure. Okay, another mechanical properties that can be used is commonly used in the, for example, in the MSTS or the material property test and so on, is hardness. So hardness is actually calculated by using the indenter shape. Okay, for example, either diamond. Okay, diamond, which is the Vickers hardness testing, and if you use ball, which is you call it Rockwell or Brenner hardness tester. Okay, so how to calculate the hardness? So it depends on the amount of load that you apply on this indenter, and then versus the area that have been produced by the indenter by increasing the load. If you understand me correctly, the increase of load F from on the indenter will increase the contact area, will increase the area that have been produced by the indenter. So the bigger the load, the bigger the area you need to calculate. So over here from this slope, okay, since this one you can get a linear relation, so from the slope you can get H, which is the hardness, which is the force divided by area, not volume, area. So this hardness is defined by force divided by area, came from the slope from the force versus area graph over here. So here we can relate hardness to the fracture strength by means in this relation over here, the hardness is almost equivalent to 3 times of the fracture strength. So the unit usually in megapascal. So the hardness is most usually reported in other unit such as Vickers hardness HB, Brenner HB, which is with unit of kilogram per millimeter square, and it is related to H in the units used here by HB equivalent to H divided by 10. Here you have the relationship between toughness and fracture toughness. Fracture toughness, which is the G1C, not the shear modulus G. So this one is toughness. The unit is in kilojoule per meter square, and the fracture toughness K1C. Okay, the unit as shown is in here, and then measure the resistance of a materials to the propagation of a crack. So the fracture toughness is measured by loading a sample containing a deliberately introduced crack of length 2C according to the tensile strength sigma C, at which the crack propagates. The quantity of the fracture toughness K1C is then calculated from this equation. Okay, then the toughness from this equation. So where y is a geometric factor near unity that depends on the details of the sample geometry, E is the Young modulus, and V or nu is the Poisson ratio. Okay, as you can see over here, to get the fracture toughness and toughness, you have to do this test where you put some initial crack or initial defect on the sample itself before you apply load. So from here, you don't have any deformation because you are measuring the fracture. So from here, you have displacement versus the stress or load applied to the sample. Hence, you can get over here, which is the fracture stress or fracture strength. Of course, in order for you to calculate the fracture toughness, you have to use this equation over here. Okay, so you have two different kind of sample. Over here is center crack plate. So you purposely put a crack over here right in the middle of the sample, basically make a hole inside it. Or you can have a compact tension where you cut this V-shaped defect over here at the edge of the sample. As for the brittle materials, ceramics, glasses, and many polymers, they have a lot of data regarding the toughness and fracture toughness compared to data related to the tension, strength, and so on. In ductile materials, a plastic zone developed at the crack tip, introducing new features into the way in which crack propagates that necessitated from involved characterizations. So the value for the fracture toughness and toughness are nonetheless cited and are useful as a way of ranking material. So you can use this information gained from the fracture toughness and also toughness of each material. Okay, here another mechanical properties that can be used, which is the loss coefficient, which is related to vibration. So loss coefficient eta is not n, is eta, measures the degree to which a material dissipates vibrational energy. So if the material is loaded elastically to a stress of sigma max, it restores an elastic energy. So U is the energy per unit volume. If it is loaded and then unloaded, it dissipate energy of this delta U. The loss coefficient is eta is equivalent to delta U divided by 2 pi times U. The value of eta usually depends on the time scale or frequency of cycling. Figure 3.11 is the loss tangent eta measure the fractional energy dissipated in a stress strain cycle. Of course, you can draw a stress strain graph over here. So you apply load and then you release the load over here. So from here, you can get the delta U, and the maximum is the U max for the energy. So eta, which is equivalent to delta U, okay, divided by 2 pi, because the sample we use have a circular cross section. U max, which is the maximum energy over here, maximum energy, which is the area over here. Other measures of damping included the specific damping capacity. So this one is also related to vibration. Damping capacity D, which is equivalent to delta U divided by U in the log decrement. So delta, the log of the ratio of successive amplitudes of natural vibrations, the phase lags delta between stress and strain, and the Q factor or resonance factor Q. When damping is small, eta is less than 0.01, these measures are related by eta, which is equivalent to D, specific damping capacity, divided by 2 pi, or you can say it as delta divided by pi, or tangent delta as 1 over Q. But when damping is large, they are no longer equivalent. Another mechanical properties that you can consider for material selection is where when you use the motion of frictions between two surfaces that producing a loss of material. So whenever you have friction, if you do it in a manner you have a pin like this, okay, in FKP you have pin on this, where you have pin applied force to a surface of the material, and then you can do a reciprocal motion or a circular motion, then the loss of material divided by the distance of the slide, you can call it as a wear rate. And then the wear resistance of the surface is characterized by the Archive wear constant, Ka. The unit is 1 over megapascal, defined by the equation here. W over A is equivalent to Ka times P, where A is the area of the slider surface and P is the normal force pressing it onto the other surface. So in this figure 3.12, where is the loss of material from surface when they slide? The wear resistance is measured by the Archive wear constant Ka defined in the text. So over here, when you increase the amount of load to the pin over here, so you will increase the wear volume, but you decrease the sliding distance over here. So if you decrease the load applied on the pin, then the sliding distance to gain the as much as of the wear volume over here. Okay, so over here you have a longer distance travel to gain the volume similar as the higher force applied. Okay, probably it's quite confusing, means that higher force have higher wear rate compared to lower loading. Nevertheless, of those data, those mechanical properties that you want to measure or you want to get, they must came from a certain standard testing procedure. So usually we use the American Society for Testing and Material, ASTM, that sets many material standards. So you have standards for testing composite, testing aluminium, testing natural fiber, and so on. Even you can measure fiber tensile strength and so on using these standards. Of course, the standard is you need to buy it anyway. Usually the company will buy the standard, okay, in form of PDF or hard copy and so on, and then use the standard procedure to measure their product. For example, they are producing stainless steel 304, so they need to provide testing data to the customer, so that the customer will say that this material is actually comparable to other material, other similar material, other same material, because the testing is according to the ASTM standards. So the standards depend on the country. Sometimes they can be used. For example, in Malaysia we use from SIRIM. They have also GIS from Japan, Australian Standard, and so on. So most commonly for materials properties or mechanical properties, we use ASTM, so that we have a common material properties chart and so on that can be used in order for you to purchase the material or to produce the material. As for the researcher also in academically, in order for you to test a new kind of material, you need also to use these standards. Otherwise, probably the testing result, the test result will be not validated. So ASTM International is like 100-year-old standard. Okay, 100-year-old, not the 100-year-old standard. It's already started from 1898. So the data came from in the ASTM International came from the various researcher, well experienced researcher from more than 100 nations. So as for the ASTM is considered as you can consider as a global standard lah for the testing standard, as well as to get the uh, reliable data for the material that you have been used or produced. So I think that's all for today's lecture. So hope you go for the comments in the forum in the ULearn. So thank you very much for your time. Later on, we'll be discussing about your assignments, not assignment, case studies, and also your tutorial. Thank you very much and have a good day.